Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the ninth installment of the Weekly Ringer series. On today's Weekly Ringer, I'm going to really recurse some of those questions that we had from last week surrounding sports games for the Super Bowl theme. And then I'm going to give you, as always, some of my own thoughts about sports gaming and what place it really has in terms of video games in general. And then I am going to bring you a Valentine-themed question for the Weekly Ringer for next week. So those of you that were wondering if I were going to put up a question that pertained to Valentine's Day, I absolutely am. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that. I will be giving you that in mere moments from now. So last week's Ringer was, as I say, about sports games. Specifically, what place sports games really, I guess, hold within the rest of video gaming in general. You know, not just maybe what role do sports games play, which was the question I asked, but also sports gamers. Are they real gamers? How does that really work in terms of all of us that consider ourselves gamers or video gamers, really view people that just play sports games? And is it any different than somebody that plays Halo or whatever the case might be? So, as always, you guys did a fantastic job. I thought the feedback was really very good, and I share some of the same thoughts that all of you have had. And let me say this first and foremost. One of the things that you guys brought up that a lot of folks said in the comments was this almost like conspiracy theory kind of tone, but I think it's probably more accurate than other conspiracy theories that I've heard, probably most others. And that is that these companies have these sports games as a means of basically just making money to make other games that are real video games, right? That all of us really know and enjoy. Well, some of it's not conspiracy at all. It's just fact, right? It's because EA, one of the largest publishers of sports games in the world, has not only a sports game for I think every single major sport in America, but also make the FIFA games that are tremendously successful all around the world, and in part because they can count on that yearly revenue. That's something that they absolutely can bank on for supporting projects that they might have to take a little bit more risk on in the future. So it definitely does support the games that we do know and love. They are somehow and in some way enhanced by those games, and I don't think there's any big secret about that. So definitely these things are a cash cow. If you can make a game every single year, and as long as you make some kind of exclusive content, or you have new features or whatever the case might be, not just new rosters, but although that certainly helps, that sells games every single year, and that's going to help to move a lot of games and move a lot of. Remember, guys, margins on hardware traditionally are a lot lower than margins on software. So if they can make their money through selling that software, and they're selling that many units each and every year, that means they're really going to be doing fairly well in terms of revenue streams. And sports games definitely drive a very big part of that. One of the things that you guys queued up on is that you're not really sure how sports gamers fit into the whole video gaming universe. And I have to say, I think that's probably pretty accurate. Are sports gamers in general? I mean, are they really gamers? I think most of you came down on the side that they are, and that even if they might not even be traditional geeks like the rest of us coming from last week's Ringer, for example, they still have that gamer mentality, maybe more along the lines of a casual gamer, which several of you spoke about. But it's just a little bit different, and that difference is something that I was really trying to highlight, and I think most of you really queued up on that very well. So I don't know. There are a lot of different opinions about this, and I could see it really going a lot of different ways. I'm not necessarily sure that I would call someone that really plays games ardently. Um, I don't know that I put them in the same league as someone that is a sports gamer selectively, but I could definitely see the argument as to why we wouldn't segregate. Um, so moving into some of my own opinion, I would say that um, the experience that I have with sports gamers, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the perception is there are plenty of people out there. So one of you mentioned this. I don't even remember exactly who, but one of you mentioned that there are plenty of people out there that buy their sports games as the only real game that they purchase, and it's the reason they buy that system. So they buy their brand new 360 just so that they can play the newest Madden game, for example. And if you look at something like the real world, I guess the real world application of some of this software, it's really staggering. The reason that the NFL really works out very well with Madden is because Madden sells a lot of units, but it also helps to really drive interest to the NFL. For maybe people that did want to play sports games but didn't necessarily watch the NFL before, they can certainly do that now, and vice versa, right? It works as a good business relationship, and it just makes sense at the end of the day. So, I really would probably like to be able to segregate folks that are just sports gamers as not really being gamers. They're just people that buy a gaming system that they know virtually nothing about just to go and play Madden. I will probably continue to segregate them as people in terms of how they really fit into the video game world. Maybe I'm just trying to hold out for something there. That we as true gamers, whatever that means, true gamers. I'm using a lot of quotes up here right now, and I apologize for that. But we as true gamers kind of hold out for someone like a sports gamer, and we'd like to tell them that they're not gamers. But I guess at the end of the day, they probably are. But in terms of that those real life applications, think of how much football people watch by virtue of how popular Madden has gotten. And think about how much football has really impacted a lot of people that maybe never would have before. A la, say, a fantasy football, which is something that really anybody can pick up and play now and have fun with. Really, Madden kind of set the stage for that. And it also set the bar pretty high for a lot of other sports games. And I used to play a lot of sports games, and now I've played virtually none. But a lot of you made that distinction about some of the games that are sport-y but don't necessarily revolve around one of the major sports. I really wouldn't count that. Like, for example, somebody said Hydro Thunder. That's pretty futuristic. That's a pretty different category, I would say, than a sports game. Now, if you're talking about a fighting game like Street Fighter 2, which is very arcade-driven, it's kind of a button masher, it's just senseless combos, those kinds of things, versus something like, say, an MMA game, for example. Those kinds of... The MMA game is definitely a sports game. It's something that people that are interested in that sport, they want to play that game. And those games are outrageously popular. So they move a lot of units, and in some ways that definitely reflects the video game community at large. For my money, I'm a gamer that really plays a lot of sports games, but did play. I'm sorry, I played a lot of sports games. I don't play a whole lot now, and I think you can be somebody that is an ardent video gamer, someone that really plays a lot of games, and then if sports games happens to be something that you do as well, awesome. But and I think most of us would probably say that. However, I know there's a huge group of people out there that just buy the games, the sports games, and buy the hardware just to be able to play those sports games on them. And I'd like to tell you that they aren't gamers, but they probably are. All right. So that's just my opinion. I think that's where we are. I think we're all in agreement with that. Sports gaming is very important to the industry, is the answer. It's very important. One of the biggest drivers in gaming is the cycle of sports games, specifically with Madden and FIFA, which I believe are the two biggest games in the world in terms of sporting, in terms of a genre. So they sell a lot of units with those, and because of the amount of money that they really bring into the industry, They have to be taken seriously to some extent, and I'm certainly not going to argue with that. When Madden comes out every year, it's just ridiculous. People have huge parties. People who don't even like to play video games have huge parties for the release of Madden just so they can, be the first to get their hands on the brand new Madden game. And it's just obscene for some of us that play video games otherwise. Although I have no idea why. And in terms of classic sports games, man, there are so many great ones, and I think there are a lot of great ones to be celebrated. And sports gaming has clearly changed, right? Back then, sports games were games that gamers were supposed to pick up and play. Nowadays, with sports games, they've clearly made that push toward attracting an audience of people that aren't necessarily gamers in their normal everyday life, just to be able to do exactly what they do: pick up a system just to play that game. So, in any case, guys, sporting games are very, very, very important for the industry. Number one, and number two, as I've said, I think sports gamers are people that we have to admit are gamers as well, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And even those traditional sports games, they've definitely changed from that time. And they've accomplished their mission, in other words, of attracting these people that don't normally play games, for better or for worse. And I would happen to say that it's happened much for the better. Now, let's see. I wanted to pick a topic this week and a question that would be focused around Valentine's Day. And I had a couple of really interesting questions, and some of them I'm probably just going to save for a random week that doesn't have a theme because they're pretty cool. So I have a couple questions that surround the Valentine's Day theme. But this week, I wanted to ask something that was specifically built around Valentine's Day and not just the theme of love or whatever the case might be and all that other stuff that we're all buying cards and chocolates for right now. Okay? But I don't know what Valentine's Day means to all of you, but I wanted to be able to ask a question that somehow spoke to it and all of you could jump on with comments and hit me with some feedback about a Valentine's Day question. So here it is. The weekly ringer for this ninth installment is this. On this Valentine's Day 2011, who is your video game Valentine? Now, could be somebody from a game. I'm sure that's the first thing that popped into a lot of your heads. If you could make that person real, who would be your video game Valentine? Maybe that's the place you go. Maybe the place that you go is someone in the media or even someone that's a designer, a producer. Who's your video game Valentine? Let me know, of course, who, and let me know why in the comments. Why is that person your video game Valentine, and what does it really have to do? Or what does that have to do with the reason that you chose that person? So, there's your weekly ringer. Let me know who your video game Valentine is, and I cannot wait to hear what some of you are going to come up with because I'm sure it's going to be priceless. So thanks for listening out there. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for keeping the series alive. As I say, this is the 9th installment of the Weekly Ringer series. I am the Commodore, and there is no reset button.